Welcome back. I am Old New Dude with my co-host
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
And we are, as promised, Eddard 2, Game of Thrones. Yesterday we had some technical difficulty. Don't know how it happened, but hopefully it doesn't happen today. But as usual, we'll start with Richard's thoughts on the chapter, and I'll jump in with my stupid stuff.
Well, and as I mentioned, well, actually, first off, I want to say that it sounds good so far. So, and I could tell last time, so hopefully that's a good sign. So, as we mentioned in our last episode, this is the second Eddard chapter, and Robert is again dragging Ned to an early northern grave.
Yeah.
And I believe that was noted by the Nauticast, the Nauticast podcast. Anyway. The summons came in the hour before the dawn when the world was still and gray. Robert wore thick brown gloves and a heavy fur cloak with a hood that covered his ears and looked for all the world like a bear sitting a horse. And we were saying that we think this is a skin-changing reference.
Yeah.
But
then I said also with the hood covering his ears that Robert's not gonna listen to nobody for nothing.
Yeah, that was a really good observation. I like that.
Oh, there we go.
He called out a question as they rode, but the wind blew his words away, and the king did not hear him. And this is, to me, is really interesting because in our POV structure, it's pretty unusual to have the POV not seem to know what the POV said is in a sense, right?
Right. Makes you wonder what that question was.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was something like how far or something, but you know, I don't know. Apparently, Ned didn't think it was worth bothering with, or maybe our author didn't. So that maybe that's
that's true.
So I'm wearing my Order of the Green Hand shirt. Her name was Wyla, Ned replied with cool courtesy, and I would sooner not speak of her. Wyla, yes, the king grinned. She must have been a rare wench if she could make Lord Eddard Stark forget his honor, even for an hour. You never told me what she looked like. Ned's mouth tightened in anger. Nor will I. Leave it be, Robert, for the love you say you bear me. I dishonored myself, and I dishonored Catelyn in the sight of gods and men. So there's so much here.
Yeah.
So, Ned tends to get mad when Jon's mother comes up.
Yes.
It's probably worth remembering that the Aboriginal word for wife is Wyla, which the Order of the Green Hand has pointed out. And they've also pointed out that in the sight of gods and men is the public vow dishonoring Catelyn, not some private affair. It's the act of bigamy which has dishonored her.
Yes. And there's a sentence in that, and I pointed it out yesterday. It's like
you never told me what she looked like.
Right. He said, "Gods have mercy, you scarcely knew Catelyn." And then the next two sentences, and it's two sentences which struck me odd, is I had taken her to wife, period. She was carrying my child, period. In my mind,
we're supposed to think it's about Catelyn, but if we go back and reread after we learn that it could be also a reference to Ashara.
Right. We don't know which wife he's talking to, but another thing that struck me odd is that two sentences should have been just one sentence because they were both happening simultaneously or within the same day. I mean, I had taken her to wife, comma, and she was pregnant or carrying my child. It just feels weird being two different things, two sentences.
Yeah. And you also said that you never told me what she looked like implies that Ned may have told Robert that she's dead. And so then the question becomes, well, the one person do we know if Wyla's dead? We know that Ashara Dane is officially dead, so you know.
Yeah.
The rising sun sent fingers of light through the pale white mists of dawn. I just kind of like the imagery. It's kind of the return of the sun. It's ending the magic of the others. Potentially, right? That the sun is getting the sun to rise might be more important than even the sword dawn or the war for the dawn kind of thing. And I just kind of like it.
Well, I know yesterday I'd said that I don't know. George does it a lot, giving the sun or the act of the sun rising, dawn, or whatever, a physical attribute, making it seem like it has it's a sin.
Fingers.
Before we've said, or I said that when Tyrion is reading the engines of war and then changing of the seasons, that maybe changing of the seasons is an engine of war. And I mean, with the sun having physical, it just starts
right. The way he personifies the environment, it's as if the world itself is at war with humanity.
Yeah. Or it's just the light is actually at war with dark.
I mean, and fingers. He also tends to associate the weirwood trees leaves with hands, right?
Yeah.
So fingers could kind of represent weirwood as well. If you ever looked at the emblem closely on my channel, you'll notice that classic image of Asherah. Those leaves look a whole lot like they have fingers. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but
no, I haven't. I have to go back and look. But I mean, I know it's been said by other people, but in my mind, I think this whole thing is two entities, two whatever, playing a game of Cybass, and the whole book is how they played the game. So with that, I mean, you got light, you got dark. Are they the ones playing that Cybass game?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know it's kind of out there, but
who is there a great other? Is there some force directly opposing Bran and so forth? Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Well, I mean, we got the Empire of the Dawn. I know it's getting a little off topic, but and I have a habit of doing that. Thank you. That the world has came bottlenecked to almost ending before, and is it to where it always does that? Does it spread out and then bottleneck for the dawn and then spread out and bottleneck for the dawn? Is it a game that's being played over and over again?
Well, that seems to be true, right? I mean, Bran is the. So I guess I've never read Unsound Variations, but I guess George has written about time travel and about chess games and Unsound Variations, right? And the concept of going back and trying again and you're in a. If you're in an unsound variation, the idea is that it doesn't matter how many times you go back and try, you're going to fail, right?
Yeah.
But so I always thought what was going on here was basically sort of Bran against the world, and he was trying over and over again, and he eventually gets it right. But I don't know. Maybe there is an actual force opposing him.
Yeah. I mean, with George, like magic has a price. I mean, if something is the bad guy, something's got to be the good guy. And if something's the good guy, something has to be the bad guy. So if Bran is the good guy in this situation, something has to be opposing him for it to be a conflict.
Yeah, but I just kind of assumed that was sort of the world and the way things were before he started, and him trying to make it a better world. But maybe not, right? And whether everything is a mistake that he made that he's undoing, or whether somebody else came along and did these things before him is the big question there, right?
Yeah. I got a question for you, but we'll do it at the end of this so I don't mess this up anymore.
All right. Robert frowned. Have we ridden onto a graveyard? And we already discussed the fact this is a chapter where Robert is again rushing Ned into a graveyard.
Yeah, but in my mind, I mean, Robert is thinking that the whole down north is like a graveyard, and is that foreshadowing for the whole north is going to die. Everything north of the neck is going to get lost. And then the battle for the dawn is actually going to be like Dany's vision and be fought at the Trident, with Dany and her dragons on one side of the river, and then the strange armored people on the other side in their black armor. I forget what the wording on it, but it sounds a lot like the Army of the Dead instead of Robert's forces on the other side of the river.
Absolutely. I think that's what it's intended to look like.
Yeah.
Not even Jon Arryn had been able to calm that storm. Eddard Stark had ridden out that very day in a cold rage to fight the last battles of the war alone in the south. This appears like it was before any Lyanna offspring. So Ned's reaction to the Daenerys assassination attempt isn't completely out of the blue, right? I mean, there's definitely this idea that Dany has to be R+L because why else would Ned get mad? But no, Ned really would not tolerate going after Targaryen children, perhaps even before Lyanna gave birth.
Well, I mean, with him taking in Theon, I mean, this is pretty much the way he reacted to the children, the Targaryen children, which I mean, he doesn't like the children being hurt.
Absolutely.
But when they're talking about this and they're talking about Daenerys, he automatically thinks of the Targaryen children that were killed at King's Landing at when. So I mean, in my mind, he's not thinking, that's my daughter or blah blah blah. But he automatically takes Dany and associates it with Targaryen children being killed. So in my mind, that's just a nod that Dany is a Targaryen. Right.
Well, and I don't think anybody disputes that, really. No matter what your theory of her parentage is. This time, Ned resolved to keep his temper. This resolution will be about as permanent as his marriage vow to Ashara Dayne. We get a description of Illyrio's guards as pointy-hatted eunuchs, which I think is might be the very first reference even to. It's certainly an early reference to the Unsullied.
Yeah. I wonder if George R. R. Martin had already had the Unsullied figured out in his head, or was it just the hint of a theory or what he was planning on?
Yeah, he may not have named them yet, right? He may not have named them yet, but I feel like a lot of the ideas of the first three books were probably already there, right? Because he was kind of writing fast. If you look at just how fast it was between book 1, book 2, book 3, a lot of Dunk and Egg of the Dunk and Egg stories are in the similar time frame. He was doing a lot of writing, so I feel like he's just trying to capture on page his thoughts, right?
Yeah, I would love to see his writing room.
Well, I think there's a difference between then and then, the struggling with the later books. But I'm hoping that as he eventually starts to wrap things up, that maybe he can get back to the point where he's that productive, because once he can sort of see the ending and start moving towards it, it might be the same sort of rapid fire pace, in which case,
once he gets over that hump that's slowing him down, then it's
maybe halfway through Dream, he could start to really take off.
Yeah.
An able and courageous man, no doubt, he said carefully, but his father is Warden of the West, Robert. In time, Sir Jaime will succeed to that honor. No one man should hold both East and West. I've always felt that this indicates that Tywin had very publicly declared Jaime to be his heir, and that everyone had publicly agreed to that in order to appease him. People act like this is some big mystery, but I feel like it's well-known fact. This is going to happen. Tywin has declared Jaime to be his heir, and everybody's accepted it.
Well, I mean, that's always shocked me with the Night's Watch, and specifically Jaime. If they give up their family and all that stuff,
right?
Why is the Lannister name and him wearing red and all? I mean, it just seems weird that how much of his Lannister blood is talked about in this book if he's just a member of the Kingsguard and now he's a Kingsguard.
It feels like it's well known that this is happening. Yeah. Nobody's, there's no pushback here. There's no, Ned is like, I know that he's inheriting. He's inheriting. We all know he's inheriting, right? So
the only person that doesn't know is Tyrion.
Lord Tywin looms eternal as Casterly Rock, so I doubt that Jaime will be succeeding anytime soon. This is definitely foreshadowing. It's ironic foreshadowing, but it's foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And they had taken the city by treachery. So that foreshadows Ramsay and the way he takes Winterfell, which might resemble how Aegon takes Storm's End.
Yeah.
He had opened his city to the lions at the gate. I wonder if that's a reference to the barbarians at the gate, which was written. It's a famous book and movie that was, just before this. So seems like it might be. It's also interesting that Jerusalem has a lion's gate.
It's weird.
He had lived his lies for 14 years, yet they still haunted him at night. Right? If Ned is a bigamist, then he is literally living the lie, right?
Every day.
Yep. And so I think it fits a lot better than the other versions of this.
Also, you got to stop and think who's around him every night is Catelyn.
Right.
So every time he gets into bed,
right,
he's reminded, hey, that's not Ashara, that's Catelyn. So
right, he's literally living his lie.
Right. He's living his lie every night that he crawls into bed.
Yep. Promise me, Ned, she had whispered. So, I mean, we learned in the previous one, it's strongly implied in the previous chapter that Promise Me, Ned is actually about Lyanna being buried in the crypts.
Yeah.
But it sure feels like it's about promise me you'll protect my offspring, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's both, it felt as though they were watching me somehow. And I thought that was interesting because maybe Ned can actually feel when the old gods, future Bran, time traveling Bran, whatever you want to call them, is right. Watching him.
And I pointed out yesterday that Ned has a very strong connection to the old gods, whoever that is. If even in the Godswood at King's Landing, without a weirwood tree, his shattered leg felt better. It didn't hurt as much when he was in the Godswood talking to the old gods or praying, whatever.
And so I think it's always worth reminding people that Bran is specifically told right at the beginning he's going to see well beyond the trees themselves, right? He's going to be virtually omniscient. His power is not going to be limited to things that happen in front of a weirwood tree. And people seem to sometimes act like that's true or that's, this is significant because it happened in front of a weirwood. It's like, yeah, but Bran's not actually limited by that.
Well, I mean, one, the followers of the old way and everything, they don't know that their old gods or whatever can't see past that weirwood tree. If they have to do it in front of the eyes of what they think.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. You're saying that Ned specifically mentions he can feel the old gods when he's in the Godswood that doesn't have a weirwood.
Right. He's pointing out that he's never been in the Godswood that didn't have a weirwood tree, and he's always prayed.
Yeah, I think it's actually something. I think I recall him saying something about how he could still feel their presence or something.
Right. Yeah. Which, I mean, is that the old gods? Is that Bran watching over him? I mean, we don't know. But Ned has a very strong connection to whoever it is that he's believing in.
Boy or man, he had no right to that throne. And I think this is kind of hilarious because, the concept of trueborn and baseborn and marriage is somewhat arbitrary. And we know that the Mad King was in love with Joanna Lannister. We're specifically told by Barristan that he would have, if he'd been allowed to follow his heart, that she was the one he would have wanted to marry.
Yeah.
So arguably, Jaime has more of a right to that throne than anyone.
Yes. Well, I pointed out that even when Rhaegar was living, there is I don't know where it is, but the Mad King says the realm will not suffer a bastard sitting the throne. And there's a lot of people that think that he is actually referring to Rhaegar actually being a bastard.
Right. And if you look, and when you look, it's interesting that when you look at the language of in Dany's chapters, if you look at the language of her parents, almost every use of the names of her parents is almost used in a way that it would imply that they're not her parents. I talk about that in my Dany video. Mm-hmm. But it's also one of the few times you hear her mother's name, it's associated with the fact that she really wanted the person she wanted to be married with was Bonifer Hasty, obviously, right? And his Holy 100, and we do get to know Bonifer in the story and so forth. And
yeah.
So there is definitely the theory out there, which maybe it's true, that Rhaegar might actually be Bonifer Hasty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would make Jamie, if the which I believe they are the Mad King's children, would
Yeah.
be his oldest son.
Well, and if you take the concept specifically of people should follow their heart, and the person he wanted to marry should be his true soulmate, and then
Yeah.
you could very much argue that Jamie is the rightful king and so forth, even because the whole concept of marriage and trueborn versus baseborn is somewhat arbitrary anyway, right?
Right. But if you stop and think about it, if you go back to George's original outline for this story, he had Jamie as a king.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and John's vision of him may have been saying, he's the true king, right? John noticing that he looks like a true king may be a reference to the fact that he's in some ways arguably the true king.
Right. Well, I mean, George says he gave up on that outline, but
and he chose to throw that in there.
Right. The seeds to make that outline true are still in the story, in my opinion.
Well, and maybe he chose to keep it in there because it still fits the story.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, we got off topic.
No, this is what we're talking about, right? We're talking about whether he's the right to the throne. So
yeah.
I am heart. Oh, one thing you mentioned is the bastard line, and I think it is worth pointing out that the only time you see bastard in the history book from the time of the World of Ice and Fire, from the time of Aerys taking the throne all the way through Robert's Rebellion and Robert's reign. The word bastard only appears that one time, and it's in the section where they're talking about the twins and Joanna, and where they're telling us like 3 times that Joanna was having an affair with Aerys. So, right, they first tell us that Aerys took her. First, they mention that she was fired for sleeping with him, and then they mentioned that he took her maidenhead, and then they mentioned that she was fired for sleeping with him again. And they say that it was, they imply that it was sometime after the marriage.
Right.
It says not long thereafter, but that implies that there's some time passed from the marriage until they were sleeping together or caught sleeping together. So anyway.
Well, it's odd though. I mean, Robert is head over heels and worships the ground that even Lyanna is buried in, and then you got Tywin. That if all this stuff about Joanna and the Mad King are true, in that society, she would be tainted goods and all that kind of stuff. And if she was willingly going to his bed before she got sent away, and Tywin's still madly in love with this woman, I put him in the same category as Robert there, that he's just obsessed with this woman that Tyrion killed. But okay.
Yeah, I don't think she's dead. Have you read that theory? That's a really good theory. You haven't read it. It's a really good theory. I don't think she's quite as that theory would hold, but I do think that she might be a silent sister in King's Landing, because there's multiple references to her kind of with the silent sisters. You look at like Tyrion's dream, for example, kind of ties her to the silent sisters, and then she's dressed as a silent sister when Jamie sees her in what she tells Jamie is not a dream, right?
Right. So look at your hands. You only got one.
But there's a lot of clues that something fishy was going on there. That they had intended a cabin for a highborn person. There's specifically, this happened like right after a servant of Casterly Rock had seen them. Well, she had a sister who was working as a servant, a baseborn sister who was working as a servant.
Yeah.
Who was, quote, sent away. It's pretty clear that she would have had her killed. So given that she had just had somebody who potentially was her sister and looked like her killed right when she was giving birth to Tyrion, people see what they expect to see. If you covered that corpse with blood, it would not be hard for her to have faked her own death.
Yeah. I mean, a cut across the belly is a cut across, because he says that he ripped his way out of her. In my mind, that is a C-section. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cesarean. So I mean, I love going down rabbit holes.
Oh yeah, it's an interesting theory. If you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. Like I said, I think it's more likely that she's a silent sister. Oh, and then there's the line, all of Tywin's smiles belong to her.
Yeah.
And the Silent Sisters in King's Landing gave Tywin a smile.
Oh yeah. Dang, I did not even think about that. Oh,
So
crap.
So that arguably is like a strong hint that she's a Silent Sister in King's Landing.
Now, okay, we always assume, and this is going down a rabbit hole a little bit, that, which my theory that Varys was the Grand Maester Pycelle and couldn't perform the proper procedures on the body, but then we get, which I think that's wrong. I mean, everything I'm looking at is pointing away from Grand Maester Pycelle, but the Silent Sisters are the one that prepares the body, and we know Tywin to be just a jack. I mean, he's not the best kind of people. And do you know if there's any like thinking that maybe Joanna and Tywin loved Joanna, but Joanna did not love Tywin. She couldn't stand him.
That could be.
Yeah, and then she actually did.
I mean, that would match her faking her death and running away, right? And
right.
Which is somewhat like Roanne Weber running away from her marriage,
which was also a Lannister marriage.
Right. And of course, if Roanne Weber is in fact in Winterfell dyeing her hair as Old Nan, then that matches Sansa running away from her Lannister marriage and dyeing her hair so that she doesn't have red hair.
So that would be 3, right?
Yep.
Sansa, Weber, Joanne, and George likes 3s.
Yep.
But I'm thinking that, okay, well, if that's her, she's a Silent Sister, and she couldn't stand Tywin, then maybe the preparation of the body was payback.
Maybe. I mean, there is the author of the annotation about how basically Cersei pulling out the crossbow bolt had ripped his stomach lining and caused the problem. Apparently in the iBooks, I think that it's been quoted on the Order of the Green Hand at one point.
Right.
He supposedly he actually explains why the body is not.
I have to go back and find that and read it, because if I remember when they talked about it, the author's annotation says basically that pulling the quiver out could result in the same thing happening to the body, but he doesn't.
Right. He leaves it open, right? And of course,
right. But here's the thing: which I think Shay is Sorella, and she poisoned Tywin, and well, if Tywin's sitting on the crapper and he can't go, is that poison in his bowels now? I mean, is that where the poison is concentrated? Because that's where the reaction to the poison is happening. And when she pulled that quiver out, or had that quiver pulled out, she's exposing the outside of the body, the skin, everything else to that poison that was stopping everything up.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Duran and Oberyn wanted Tywin to be poisoned that early is one of my problems with the poison theory. But then again, would if we had if Oberyn had a bastard daughter, they were kind of going rogue. Who knows, right? I mean, maybe. And both the Order of the Green Hand and Toodles have written up separate, have separately come to the conclusion that Oberyn is likely Shay's father. Whether or not she's Sorella, she could be an unacknowledged bastard or.
This is true, but you got Oberyn wanting to go at a faster pace than Duran did. 2, you got Oberyn now dead.
Sure.
And 3, I mean, not the AB 3. Shay might not know how long she would be able to have access to Tywin. So I mean,
yeah. I mean, and she may have decided to do that after he died too, right? She may have poisoned him right after Oberyn died as a backup. She may have been sort of the backup plan.
Right. But like, things went wrong. Oberyn died. This might be retaliation.
Strike now while we still can.
Yeah.
She definitely knows a whole lot about their family, like a whole lot about their family for some reason, and she knows how to put on armor properly. There's some interesting things. She's an interesting character for some reason. Anyway,
George has mentioned that the book Shay and the show Shay are not the same person, and the show Shay came out.
Yeah, but he sort of implies that the show Shay is better, right? That's one of the things that I don't like about the theory.
He says that her portrayal of Shay is endearing. It makes it.
Yeah.
She does a better connection between her and Tyrion. But Book Shay, Book Shay don't really care.
Yeah, she's trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
I'm heartily sick of secrets and squabbles and matters of state, Ned. It's all as tedious as counting coppers. So this is our first hint at Robert's irresponsible budget.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally we close with, Robert would do what he pleased, as he always had, and nothing Ned could say or do would change that. He belonged in Winterfell. He belonged with Catelyn in her grief and with Bran. A man could not always be where he belonged, though. Resigned, Eddard Stark put his boots into his horse and set off after the king.
Well, that's that last sentence, and we were talking about it yesterday and on a couple of the other chapters. That first sentence and the last sentence. First sentence, the summons came in the hour before the dawn, when the world was still and gray. And I said that the hour will be late when all men come together, when the call goes out to everybody, hey, we got to make a final stand. And it'll be the last hours of the battle for the dawn. Everybody won't jump on the fence right there at the get-go.
And the world being gray implies that it's not that things aren't black and white, right? The morally gray and things will become more black and white when you get to the point where we're actually battling for the dawn. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably part of what that language implies as well.
Yeah. Then you got the Eddard Stark put his boots into his horse and set off after the king. And a horse is the reason that Eddard and the king are in the situation that they are. The fight with Jaime and Ned's leg getting crushed by the horse is what sent Robert to go hunt, which got him killed by the boar, and him getting killed by the boar is what got Ned killed, because, that's just my brain.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Well, you said you wanted to talk about something else at the end?
Yeah, but the thing is, though, the way my mind is, I have completely...
well, next time.
Yeah, well, I'll forget it by then, too.
Well, if it comes up again, we'll get it when it does.
Let me look at this one page, and I'll be reeling to go. Yeah. Do you want to talk about how Ned knew exactly what was going to happen to the Dothraki, or are you just going to cut it?
Oh yeah, that's a good point, right? Ned is often seems to accurately predict things, right? He's a lot smarter than some people think he is. He knew what Robert's reaction would be if he turned down Robert, and it was dead on. Cersei tells us nobody expected Ned to take the position, right? And that's what makes them consider him a threat, right? That's the idea that Catelyn understood the politics and Ned didn't is completely backwards. Yeah. The idea that he didn't understand the Dothraki is wrong. If anybody, not that anybody thinks that, but it's pretty smart that he does understand the Dothraki. Pretty well read.
Like I was saying, if a lord in the north at Winterfell knew exactly how the Dothraki would react and not come across the narrow sea and everything, but then you pointed out a good point that, I said, if everybody knows the Dothraki or about them, knew that they weren't go across the narrow sea, why did Illyrio marry Dany
and if we're getting conspiratorial, right? If we're getting conspiratorial, which why not? This is an author, so unlike the real world, it doesn't require that much coordination and secrecy. An author can make conspiracy happen pretty easily, right? So if we're being conspiratorial, then Jorah may have been specifically instructed to make sure that he exposed the plot to poison Dany and prevent it in order to motivate Khal Drogo. So
anger him enough to cross the narrow sea. Yeah. When you said that yesterday, man, my head went bam.
Yeah, it's worth repeating because it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, definitely. But okay, that was it.
All right.
Let's see. Next chapter is Tyrion.
Yes.
All right. I can't wait to get to it. I didn't read it last night just for the simple fact that we were redoing Eddard, and I wanted to
Right,
keep it
right. I haven't read it either. So
tomorrow.
I started a little bit, but I haven't gotten very far.
Yeah, and I saw your printout for your reading order.
Yeah.
So thank you for sending that to me. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, that's what I like to do. Anyways, I like to focus on each storyline that way, so that I can remember all the minor characters and things as I'm going through. It's a lot easier that way.
Right. Well, you can see slight deviations from characters, and I'm gonna definitely do it that way. But I appreciate you putting it on the email and then also putting it on Twitter. So thank you. Tyrion's going to be next. I hope y'all have a good day. And are you coming back tomorrow, Richard?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Me and Richard will be back tomorrow. I've been Old New Dude, and he's been
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
Y'all have a good day.